Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, whenever you are. Thank you for tuning in. This is AH1, the Asian Highway, Storytellers in Action. We are in our 10th and final week of Season 1.
Episode 10.
Episode 10. Thank you for listening to this dime. We appreciate all the support over the past few weeks. It's been a great journey. On today's highway, we are making a stop with filmmaker. Her name is Parisa Barani. So we're going to talk to her about some of her projects. She's done the business side of film. She's now on the creative side of film, so she's seen it from both sides of the camera. We'll talk about some of the activism work she's done and she's doing, and kind of her journey from the Middle East to here, and here being LA. We're at Visual Communications Little Tokyo. And before we bring Parisa in, we're going to have a chat among the three of us as usual. Miss Dr. Das and Miss Jai Shankar. Hello, how are you guys doing tonight?
Very, very good.
Oh, yeah. We're doing awesome. I mean, episode 10, man. Let's make this happen. This is great.
Well, it has happened. And just for a quick summary, we've had a great journey so far, right? I mean, we've talked to filmmakers. We've talked to nonprofit founders. We've talked to musicians. We've talked to composers. We've covered the gamut here, haven't we?
We've stopped on all these wonderful stops along the Asian highway as we intended to do.
Right.
And we've created a bigger family in the process of Asian Americans of various kinds.
It has, and kind of on that note, I want to introduce this article that recently came out online, and it's a relevant topic. It's not really timely, and it's evergreen. It's an article that came out in the Aerogram, and it talks about activism, but it specifically talks about that. The article's headlined "A Call to Action for South Asian American Millennials." It lists a few points on how South Asians could be more active in the community. And one of those points really resonated with you, Meda, if you want to kind of bring up what that one particular point is. And I think that point that you want to bring up resonates really well with what we want to do as a group, right?
Yeah, well, I think the preface of the article is basically that there are a variety of different South Asians of different different socioeconomic backgrounds. And so we often forget that we have DACA recipients, we have illegal workers, we have poor immigrants. We're not just a bunch of crazy rich Asians. And so one of the other points, I think the gist of the article was basically that millennials need to be more active, and we don't really have much representation in Senate.
Meaning South Asian millennials. Is that what it is?
Yes.
Right.
Yes. So they had a very interesting point where they compared South Asians to Jewish Americans and how Jewish Americans sort of got together and created community and subsequently mobilized themselves into representing themselves in different fields and also in government, and that we only have Kamala Harris. And so...
It was half, by the way. She's not even full South Asian.
She counts as a 0.5.
Yeah,
0.5.
yeah.
But so I thought that was an interesting point, that we're really bad at communicating with each other. And I think that's the mission of our podcast, is to facilitate that communication and not to segregate ourselves into fractions and fractions of a community.
Right. So 2 points I wanted to add to that. One is just the definition of South Asian. It's India, Pakistan, Nepal, Bhutan, Sri Lanka, Maldives, Afghanistan, and Tibet. I guess that's on the fringe.
Yeah, that's more
Bangladesh. Should I get Bangladesh?
Yeah. It's basically what was, or maybe sometimes still known as, the Indian subcontinent,
right,
along with some of these other nations that you mentioned.
Right.
We were the part of Africa that went floating up north.
Right. Yes, I wholly believe that as well. But the other point I wanted to make, and Deborah, if you would also add to this, is this goes to the content of H1. And the people we've talked to, including Parisa later in this episode, this article states that we need to overcome our differences and unite. And that applies not just to South Asians, to different countries that are within that continent, but to the larger continent of Asia and to, for that matter, the world. I mean, we focus too many times on our differences and forgetting that, you know what, there's a common thread everywhere, and we're not really pursuing it. Maybe we need to make more of an effort to do that.
I definitely have a thought on that. The Indian American diaspora, many of our folks, those of us who had immigrant families that came before us, they came, in the 60s, 70s, we're relatively a newer group. We came, post World War II. I think, though, we've made a lot of progress in terms of establishing ourselves as figureheads and having a variety of occupations, like Medha mentioned. I think with the following generation or the upcoming generation, the younger people that are in college now, I think as time goes on, we're going to be seeing more South Asian, who we refer to as millennials. I feel like they will be taking those positions of leadership, of being up at the front, and they won't necessarily be taking leadership positions as CEO roles, which we've already seen. The CEOs of Microsoft, Pepsi, even Google, these are all, South Asians. And I think beyond being corporate figureheads, I think we are slowly going to be seeing more South Asians taking more political leadership roles. And I mean, some of it's already been started, but I think it's going to be developing more and more as the generations start coming out in this country.
We have an Indian American in Congress, in the House of Representatives. Right. We have another Indian American in the California State Assembly. Yeah. Cities of Cyprus, where I live, we had an Indian American mayor for 2 years.
Not to be confused with the country of Cyprus.
Not the different spelling, yes. South Asians have definitely, the mayor of Artesia, which is known as Little India,
right,
had a Pakistani mayor, which was great because you're crossing barriers now, and there was a lot, it promotes unity, right? So we're getting there, and let's not just be focused on ourselves as well. I mean, there are other cultures who are also making similar inroads. Our guest today hails from Iran. We had leadership in Beverly Hills who had Iranian or Persian roots as well. So it's many of us are making strides in politics. And so with that, let's transition here to Parisa. First of all, any thoughts that you have on what we talked about so far?
Hi, everyone. Yes, I do.
Okay, so please chime in.
The thing that I always admire about the Jewish community is they have each other's back. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. They support each other. Mm-hmm. They're the smallest community, believe it or not, the South Asian community, which I do consider Asian because I do know, because when I'm applying for different grants or labs, that's the category I fall into. But we don't necessarily support each other. We don't create those jobs. We go outside of community. And we have a thing saying, which is very interesting, like when you go shopping from a Persian, they're going to double sell you because you're just Persian. And they're like, we give you a discount, which is not really true. Yeah. It's the same as like hiring people. Like for me, whatever work, like now that I'm in filmmaking, why can't I just like take a look at those people that are immigrant first and see what I could, can I give them the opportunity to get an interview? Can I give them the place of, the place that they haven't been given? Because I could guarantee you, if you come from, Israel or, a Jewish community, and if you go to a synagogue, they would take you in, they would support you. But if you go, and I consider myself a Muslim, if I go to a mosque, they would, but it's not as supportive and like loving and kind. They really have each other's back. And I noticed this within the Muslim community. Like we have two different like type of Muslim, and a lot of people know Sunni and Shia. Instead of fighting among them, like they fight among them constantly. You said something, putting the differences aside, we end of the day, like be an advocate for one another instead of like trying to be competitive. And it's the same thing as being a woman. We have a lot of women on the table executive, but why is it that women are not getting hired? They are the gay. They call it a goalkeeper.
Gatekeeper.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. See, I'm a foreigner. Right there. So if you have that, power, use it. Use it and hire those people from your root. I'm a woman. I would advocate for women, but for Amors, I would advocate for people that haven't been given the chance, the privilege. Their second generation, their first generation, it's harder to find, create that opportunities for them, basically. I'm, ranting. But.
No, it's okay. It's perfect.
Yeah.
So It's funny. I worked in the film industry as an aspiring artist when I first started out, and then on the business side, beginning out in India. You're the opposite. You began out on the business side of filmmaking and then became a storyteller and more on the artistic side of things. So what inspired you to make that transition?
I saw that a lot of stories people are afraid of touching or telling because they're very prerogative, or they would spark a conversation. People are scared of talking about it. I could say, even for myself, I could admit to this. I'm at fault myself. 5 years ago, I would not come and consider myself, and I would openly say I'm a Muslim American filmmaker. There was no place for it. As much as I have no filter to say this, what happening to our country is really horrible, but it always existed. And what Trump did, to be honest, is open that door for people to say, you know what, I'm a Muslim. People now know what Muslims are or what immigrants are. They know what, third, second generation are. You're not born here. Before 5 years ago, nobody talked about it. Yeah. Nobody even brought those issues. It was an issue of women filmmaking a little bit, LGBT, community, but nothing about immigrants. People were not educated. So even though he kind of destroying the community, the culture, and our American dream, but he's actually creating a lasting change, I think, because people are talking about those issues and they're not afraid to say it. Right. And I am personally one of them. I'm not afraid to go there and say, you know what, I want to tell a story that tells a human side of a Muslim story, a woman story, not necessarily a stereotype terrorist, a villain that you see on TV constantly over and over, someone that's authentic, human story, we go through the same pain, same suffering. We are all in the end of it human. So, and people talk about that. So to answer your question, for me, I was in the business side because I'm Persian and I choose I chose the safe route. But after a while, when I saw people are not talking about those stories, I kind of got very sick of it, to be honest. There was a point of enough is enough. And if I want to create those stories and give those opportunities to immigrants, I need to be the one to write it and create it. Because honestly, TV channels or stations or networks are not going to do that, or they were not doing it. Now a little bit they're paying attention. They bring diversity group to the room to see the reaction if they have something that's not a stereotype for viewers rating, but it's still not happening. So you need to create your own work.
One of our previous guests was talking about how prior to 9/11, they didn't know what Muslims were. Yeah. They meaning the people she was around. And but people have always known about Iran. Should I call it Iran?
Iran.
Yeah. Know how Iran came out of it. There's a great 80s music video that Genesis did where Khomeini is sort of running around. What's it called?
Land of Confusion.
Land of Confusion, yes. Precisely.
Yes.
But, in the international circuit and the world cinema circuit, Iranian film has done really, really well and translates beyond borders, more so than, I would say, Indian cinema, a lot of other Asian cinema. And why do you think Iranian stories have resonated so well with audiences? And what can Americans sort of learn from the fact that a story told in a very foreign setting, that it can translate so well to people who've never been to Iran or aren't familiar with Iranian culture?
Iranian films are very dramatic first. They're I grew up watching Indian film, which is kind of funny. Right. My favorite actor was Amir Khan and Shah Rukh Khan.
All the Khans.
Yes. King Khans.
All the Khans, Right. But Iranian cinema, what it does, which is very interesting, it doesn't tell you what to think or what to decide. It leaves it for you to be okay, this is how life is. The good example of it is one of my favorite directors, Kiarostami. And all of his film, it was such a loss because he leaves it for us. It's we are just the device to tell someone's story. It's not like we're trying to make up something that doesn't exist. And I think that's what Iranian cinema does really well. It literally goes beyond like, oh, I need to attach point A to point B to point C and have a resolution. It leave it out without a resolution for you to decide. And along the way, it's very emotionally connected to the audience.
It's open interpretation.
It's very open to interpretation,
Right.
exactly. And, they've been around for years. Like, Iranian cinemas, like, it's so funny because it's actually not familiar to Iranian cinema. If you talk to American, I don't want to generalize, but it's most likely now because of Asghar Farhadi winning the Oscar, they're more, familiar to it. But prior to that, not a lot of people would know about Iranian cinema. It's like international film festival. So you guys, of course, would know because our background is different.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not a on the page story. Let's put it this way. American writing is very on the page, and American storytelling is always one side. Like, you never see a story that shows you the two sides, the Eastern side, the Western side, and leave it for you to decide what is wrong, what is right, what is happening, what would I do? Like, it doesn't leave you with questions. And that's what Iranian cinema is great at. And I think they're very dramatic and sad all the time. Their music is sad. So it's kind of shows in their art. And I like that, sad
Sure.
art. Yeah.
So, Parisa, to kind of maintain that talk about storytelling, to go into your background a little bit, you studied at the CD Theater Intensive at Skidmore College. Anne Bogart personally mentored you in various techniques in how to approach stories and how to get compelling performances from actors telling the story or performing the story. Can you tell us a little bit more about that, and what was your experience from that whole? What was your experience like from that whole thing?
Well, I always envied to go to film school, so it's really great that it's my AFI is my first professional film school, to be quite honest. But I applied for summer intensive with Amborga. That's what I did. It was 60 artists, and out of our 60 artists they chose around the world, I think there was 4 directors, the rest were actors. And she had 2 approach, which is one is very physical, which is called Suzuki. It comes from a Suzuki style, which is a stomping, and it's really amazing. And then you in the moment you could perform.
Yeah.
And the other one is viewpoint, which comes from a dance format, which is based on relationship with others on a stage. For me, interesting part, which totally makes sense, the Suzuki was the most easiest because if you're born in Iran and you're from Middle East and you lived through the war, you're kind of there's a word for it, very hard, you're very, you could work hard, and I can't find a word for it right now, but it's very demanding. Our life is very demanding, so we're okay with things that are physically demanding, and you think with your brain more than emotions.
Yeah.
It's everything logic. That's the word. You're more logical, and Suzuki is logical. There's a format, you follow through, and it's a training. For me, the difficult was the viewpoint because you had to let go, and you had to feel the room, the other relationship with people around you, and you had to work as a community, which goes back to what you guys talk about.
Right.
It's really hard. It was really hard for me to depend on 5 other people on a stage and see what they're doing to react to reaction.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to solo follow a plan. Suzuki's was a plan. It was a formula, you follow, you do it, and you get the result. It's like math. You're good at math. But the other one was more dance, and you're not used to letting go. So I had it was one of the best experiences of my life. But a lot of personal thing came up for me that was ingrained to me as a child, and it was kind of I look at it as very therapy. Art is very therapeutic for me.
Therapeutic, yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's very much so.
Right.
Which, in the end, it made me make a decision to what, I'm going to tell the stories now. Forget business.
Right. And I think on the point of the viewpoint technique, I think that'll be a challenge for most of us, right? I mean, it's basically asking you to put yourself into someone else's shoes or to understand something from another person's viewpoint or perspective. And I think that's a challenge for everybody. I mean, I think that's kind of what we also face, the three of us face. It's part of every person we've had in the same city you're in has also had that same challenge. I think that's a human issue to be able to say, you know what, this is my bubble. How do I put myself in your bubble or your bubble or your bubble?
Yeah.
It's something that I think we all have to go through. So it's easy to sit here and be logical and cold and calculated and manipulative, but to think of somebody else's life and their source, not easy for any of us to do. So
yeah. We're in the end of the day, we're all the same.
Right, exactly.
And that's what we kind of have to come to. That's what, peace is. That's what we try to do. But it's really hard when you're raised very calculated and very driven based on result. With viewpoint, there's no result.
Right,
like you need to just be in the moment.
And sometimes it's intangible.
Very,
you can't
very
feel
intangible.
it.
Very intangible.
Yeah.
And that's that's something that I probably struggled the most during the program, but it let me let go of a lot of things. Which I think,
so how did you deal with that? What was your thought process mentally to get through those moments?
Wow, a lot of tears. I mean, mentally, I think I had to want it bad enough. Like I had to want it bad enough to change or let go or like try to change my perspective and not look at everybody, no matter what their background was, what their religion was, what their color of a skin was, or what gender was, that, what, everybody has a story and we're all equal and nobody is better than somebody else. The reason that what we're going through politically in the world is because it's the power dynamic.
Sure.
In viewpoint, you do not have a power dynamic. You're all like start from the same point and you just... The journey is based on someone else's journey. So you'll go along with them and you have to be okay with that. Sometimes you take the lead, sometimes you're a follower, and that's okay. There's no ego.
So, to continue on with the viewpoint talk, I know you've traveled around the world to various film festivals where you've seen films from around the world which introduced you to various viewpoints that may be foreign to you. Is there a common thread that you've been able to pick out from, all your travels and going to all these international film festivals and seeing film from around the world?
I think all the different festivals has different theme. More like especially American cinema and international is different. Like, I mean, that's perspective too. That's my opinion. It's just what I picked from it and what I felt it was. Like Berlin has a very political aspect to it. And, they are funded by the government. Cannes is more like prestigious, very more celebrity-driven. But the common thread that I found, which I really enjoyed, you see films that sometimes doesn't get released in America, which, like, I look for. And I'm like, you see people that make films are really into making films when they go to festival to show they have something to say. Yeah. Whether it's like, it's very different than like, TV and like, but now our medium has changed anyways. TV is the better medium to reach people, like with the Netflix, Hulu. And they try to be the same as quality as films that used to come to the festivals. But the common thread was like when you get to see all the press releases, talk to people, and you're like, wow, they all had something to say. And there's a reason they made the film, whether it was comedy or drama, but they wanted to make impact to their own society or the community where they come from.
Yeah. So that's a perfect segue to the question I have. I believe you were at South by Southwest.
Yes.
And you created a panel there, and it's called, I have it here, Authentic Muslim Voices Tell Their Stories. So tell us more about the experience you had in putting the panel together, and how does it fit in the context of sharing these stories in a positive light, because we all know the politics and the sociology of religion in this country. And there are a lot of people who are scared or skeptical or doubtful for whatever reason, whatever their holdups might be. How do sharing these stories help break barriers and get to the people in a real positive way?
It was a very good experience. At first, I was very scared to actually put the panel together, it was literally when the election happened.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, I have to applaud South by Southwest because, they're trying to change their programming. It's becoming way more diverse. And what happened was I put this panel together. I was in a networking event and they said they're looking for different panels. I said, well, and there was no way I would think, like, I did not think Trump is going to win. But at the time when I applied, by the time we got in, he did win. When I put the panel together, I wanted to talk about people that, they're Muslim, but don't necessarily they wear hijab but this is a culture as well, like, Jewish people. They have a culture and this is their background. And I wanted to say, like, show a family a story that, happened to be a mom and dad a Muslim, or the kid of the Muslim parent could be gay, or they have a divorce issue. It's just normal human stories. That was the purpose of the panel. But because of what's happening at the time, when we were at the panel, the question that the audience was asking were really, really, really surprising to me. People were asking questions that I was like, wow, this country is getting awakened,
What were the sort of questions?
Like, one of the people were like, well, do you think you guys would get deported as Muslim? Do you have to put it like, do you have to report it when you come into this country, your religion? What Islam is like they were questioning things that I was like, I thought people would know. Like, oh, so is a religion is not just a culture. Oh, Iranians, they're not all Muslim. No, they're not.
There's a sizable Jewish population.
There's a huge Jewish population.
Go to Beverly Hills.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Like, and then so everybody that I put together the panel, one is a LGBT. Actually, she's Pakistani. Fazia Mirza. She's an LGBT Muslim. She's an advocate Muslim, and she's she was on the panel. There was a Lebanese lady and there was a Persian woman. So all of us across the board had different background.
Yeah.
Like my storytelling is about female repression and challenge the religion that, for instance, like sexuality or spirituality could coexist within Islam, and the country is namely Muslim, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's Islam. It's just the government is a power play. Like, America is supposedly Christian, but I don't think if you talk to a Christian, be like, no, there are a lot of things that are not portrayed in the correct way by the government.
Yeah.
So the panel experience was very interesting. The room was packed. People really were interesting to know about us as people, which I had a different idea to talk about a stereotype. It turned out to be a very political conversation. And Austin, it was very surprising to me. People were very liberal. They were really open.
Yeah.
And they were really wanting to know more, which is, to me, it's fascinating.
It's one of the more open cities in Texas, that's for sure.
Yes.
Yes.
And pick up on your note about religions in the Middle East. I mean, people don't realize just how diverse the Middle East is in terms of religion. Not just Iran, but Iraq, Afghanistan, Pakistan, India, just the whole Middle East and South Asia. There's Jewish and Muslim and Hindu and Christian. I mean, they're all there. Yeah. So I mean, obviously, I think this is part of the storytelling, right? To break those barriers. Yeah, exactly.
So talking about storytelling, you have recently joined AFI's Women Directors program.
Yes.
And you're with a good group of women, of which one was a previous guest on this podcast. Can you tell us a little bit about how you were recruited into the program and what short film you're making right now with them?
Sure. So this is a long story. I'll try to make it very short. When I decided I want to tell a story, the main reason I decided that I have a theater background, hence City Company, and I directed theater, and that's like my first passion, stage. But I was in a reading, and I came across this story that was written by a American woman from Indiana, Jennifer Blackmer. It was a reading of a play called Human Terrain. And I couldn't stop crying. I still remember it was 4 years ago, 3.5 years ago, almost 4 years ago. And at the time, I just left distribution. And I was working at a bank. So I decided, yes, as a bank manager. So I decided I'm going to approach this woman and see if she wants. I requested a Q&A, and I said, I tried to get a hold of her, find her on Facebook, emailed her. I said, I want to option your play and turn it to a screenplay because it was not getting produced.
Yeah.
And she's like, well, I'm not willing to give it away. And lucky for me, because I have no idea if she would have said yes, who would have had to write this with me or help me like collaborate. So she's an amazing writer. She goes, well, I want to, turn it to a screenplay. I was perfect. So we started working on it together. A little while, the play actually got shortened and, the play got produced and she got the Penn Award. We got the Rebecca Sloan for it. Institute award.
That's a very prestigious award.
Yeah. We got really lucky after 2 years. The story, what fascinated me about this was about a program that was shut down due to controversy. So they hired these anthropologists and they sent them to Iraq and Iran. And during the war, Afghanistan, and they were supposed to be the culture bridge between the people, the civilian, and the army. So what happened in Vietnam doesn't happen, see what their needs are. I mean, after all, we are inventing their country, we are taking over their country. I always think to myself, we have over 800 army bases all around the world, but not one country in the world has an army base in America. Why is that? Why is that? And we are afraid of other countries coming and attacking us. But we have army bases in Germany. We have army bases in Japan.
I used to go play tennis against the high school.
Jordan. It's beyond my imagination. And we are the one work out of fear in this country, to be quite honest. So this program was supposed to do some good. But what happened was they used the information this anthropology turned in to their own benefit. The military did. It was the most expensive program funded by the Navy. It got shut down eventually, and through controversy, the Anthropology Association shut it down, and they started a new, and it might be coming back. So this is what the screenplay is about. The feature film is about the friendship between a Muslim woman and a Jewish woman, and how they save each other's life, no matter what they're from across the other side, their opposite side, and they're not. It's really hard to connect with someone, but they have such a strong motherhood bond, no sexual connection, just a female, heartfelt motherhood connection as two women, and they ended up saving each other's life. So one works for the American Army, the anthropologist, and one is the Muslim woman. Now, going throughout the process, because again, going back to my immigrant, you have to create those spaces for us, for the community. I've been having a hard time getting this film financed. So I wrote a short with a couple of my friends. I directed it. And so I have some body of work, but it still was not enough. It still is what have you done? Who do you know? What it's not about money. It's about either you're born in it or you know the right people or how much work you. But the good thing this country also has, if you work hard, you could make it happen. It might take a long time, but you can. Which in Iran probably is much harder to do that, or other countries. But so pretty much when I made my first short, which has nothing to do with the feature, I applied for this program because I saw the success rate coming out of it. A lot of people came out and made their feature. I have a feature film ready. So I applied with this short version of Human Train. So I'm making a short version of this feature film, hoping if I go to the rooms, I'll be like, listen, this is my, short film. This is how the feature film is going to be. So trust me, believe me, and give me money to make this film. I'm, credible enough as a woman, as an immigrant woman, to make this film. You don't need it to give to a man or someone that's done 10 other jobs.
So Parisa, I know you were born in Iran and you made your way to this country. What drew you to coming to this country, the United States, and in what way, did it help foster your creativity, your storytelling abilities?
It's funny enough, I moved to Canada, Vancouver, which I love Canada.
Our producer Marvin is from Canada
Vancouver,
as well.
yeah.
So, yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful country. The only difference, America has opportunities for you. I applied to get my MBA, so I came here and I had family here. And as much as we complain, but it sucks you in, especially Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And the fast pace of it, the opportunities that are out there, you just have to stay focused and go after what you want. As much as I love Canada and it's a great country to live in, it just was like more, people enjoy their life so much more than us here.
Yeah.
We're like here on a go every day. Over there the quality of life is higher, but at the same time there's a limitation of how much you could do.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it has to do with the capitalism, what it is, but we have that in this country. So when I applied to come to college, then one thing led to another, and I ended up staying here. And I just So,
Okay.
yeah.
So let's wrap with this. We talked about the pace of life here. And sometimes we get so caught up in living our lives, we forget to give back, or we forget to get involved with stuff we care about. So is there something that you believe in, some causes that you're active in that you'd want people to support, or just what can people do to be more involved with the world beyond just the fast pace of their daily life?
My biggest thing is hire the right people for the job.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Hire the right people, regardless of their gender, their color, their religion, regardless of their resume, and see the people's passion. Give them chances, because believe it or not, my goal is in 5 years to open that organization, then kind of a nonprofit that help people that they were not born into it. Their uncle was not so and so. If you notice, especially you guys know this, if you're from Iran or Middle East or India, if your dad is a doctor, you most likely become a doctor. It's very rare that you decide you want to do something else. But there are people that want to do something else, and if they didn't have that opportunity and they have talent, see that, give them the chance, and foster those people, because that's how those outbreaking stories break through, what Ava DuVernay did for her community. She had a PR, and her first film is amazing, but she didn't get the crowd she wanted, the attention. But she literally is I'm going to open a distribution company to, distribute film of people of color,
Yeah.
So whatever way you can. So for me, hopefully I could do the nonprofit that give back to the community in somehow. But the people that really, really want it bad enough, but they need that little beginning help, like what Tribeca did for me, because they put a stamp on me.
Sure.
And people now brought me for interview. People now took me to rooms and oh, what do you have? You would not believe it. I would apply for grants over and over, but one just gave me a chance, read the script, really believed in something that didn't have a body of work, one short, an unknown writer, unknown director, and then after that I was on the map.
Yeah.
And I think I can speak for all of us that all three of us are kind of in the same boat. I mean, the three of us are here. This is not stuff we had a training or background in before. I mean, I've had to learn how to be a journalist. We've all come together learning new things that our families weren't exactly in when we were growing up. So I think we're living proof of that. If someone gave us opportunities and here we are. So that's so very true. So, Parisa, this has been a great chat. We really appreciate you joining us today.
Thank you.
Where can people find you? Or is there a website? Is there Twitter or Facebook? What's the best way to get in touch with you?
Facebook, Twitter, social media.
Okay, and where can they find you? Just look up your name?
Yeah, look up my name, Parisa Barani. I am on IMDb with my email too. So,
Okay.
yeah, it's easy to find people nowadays.
Okay, and you could also find us. Our email is asian.highway.live@gmail.com. We're also on Facebook, Asian Highway 1, AH1. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram. Our handles are the same on both sites. It's ah1live.com. Again, ah1live. No, did I say .com? I'm sorry, ah1live. That's our handle for both Facebook, for Twitter and for Instagram. Devesh, where else are we?
Well, Paribal, I'm so glad you asked. You can
Yes.
definitely find us on iTunes, on Google Play Music, Spotify, and YouTube.
Sounds good. And again, this is the end of our journey for this season. Thank you so much for following us on these 10 exits we've had, I like to say, on the Asian Highway. This is AH1, the Asian Highway, Storytellers in Action. A big shout out to Marvin Yue for another great episode and helping us on the production side. Thank you to Visual Communications. Thank you to Parisa Barani for being here. Thank you, Devesh. Thank you, Meda. You've been great co-hosts. I couldn't be prouder to work with the both of you. This has been an inspiring story for all of us to chat with people, and let's do this again in another season.
Sounds good to me. But with that, I'd like to say, be good, y'all.